Welcome to Lou Palumbo's Between the Lines. Problem solving for our future. Lou. Common sense, logic, and reasoning. Lou. The man that can't stand hate and animus. Lou. Stimulating the thought process of America. Lou. Where being right is not political, it's factual. Lou. Providing real solutions in real time. And now, here's your host, Lou Palumbo.
Here we go again. End of the holiday weekend. 57 shootings in the city of Chicago, 13 in New York, some more dispersed across the country. Interesting fact attached to all of this, every single victim, fatality, was a minority. So at some point, I'm hoping that the minority community begins to realize that they've been had and they need help, and for whatever reason, that voice is absent. So, but we can get into that further, especially in light of the fact that we're having all of these discussions about gun control or gun management or whatever you'd like to call it or quantify it as. Probably are aware that Illinois has very strict gun laws, and Chicago, I don't believe you're permitted to buy a gun. In any event, there just seems to be a lack of political will to put this condition, as we refer to it, under arrest. And it's not that difficult to do. If people are wondering why Chicago is the focal point of all these mass shootings, it's very simply explained. It has to do with gang, turf, wars, and it also has to do with drug trafficking. I read something a few years ago where the drug cartels actually have a cartel member positioned in Chicago coordinating the distribution of controlled substances, which I think it almost serves as if it's a hub. You know, it's a hub for United Airlines. And if you look at the way it's positioned in the country, it can kind of go in almost every direction you need it to go. And I think that same thing applies with this drug trafficking for some reason. You would think it would be the West Coast, although the largest cocaine seizure in the history of the country took place in Los Angeles. It's too far on the West Coast to feed the whole country. So Chicago seems to be the place. Along with that, we had a very unfortunate incident in Highland Park, Illinois. Another mentally disturbed individual indiscriminately shot into a crowd, killing 6 people and wounding 24. This young man was all over the social media and the internet. You know, part of the issue here, and I want people to understand this, is that we're pigeonholed. I have firsthand knowledge of cases where people have threatened to commit suicide. They have been put into facilities. You would think that that information regarding their state of mind would be disseminated in such a manner that when you run what they call a NICS check, a National Instant Criminal Background Check, which is what takes place when you buy a gun, it would be there. It's not. There's no database. Not to mention the HIPAA laws. If you are adjudicated mentally ill in a court of law, well, that's all well and good, and that's applicable in the county in which it takes place. But if it occurs in San Diego County, no one in Sacramento County might know about it. And it makes the circumstance that you can lie on a 4473, the federal firearms form, which is submitted to the Department of Justice for a NICS check, your request to buy a gun. You can be adjudicated mentally ill in New York, go down to Florida and buy whatever you want. Or for that matter, Ohio, Michigan, Texas, most of the southern United States, if not all of them. I don't know how we're going to fix this, but I don't even think there's a conversation taking place. And I do know that this bipartisan Senate agreement, which was signed into law by the president, is really just a lot of window dressing. It's not going to really lend itself to much. I mean, at this point, I think that the opposition to firearms, to the Second Amendment, have conceded the point that we're not getting rid of guns and we're not getting rid of assault rifles because of the number. We have no enforcement mechanism. So I don't know what to tell you, but the country's being pulled in many, many directions. I'm going to continue to whisper in your ear about the borders, because the borders are going to redefine this country. I am struggling to understand why we are allowing millions of people to come into the country that we are going to burden the taxpayers with taking care of, especially in light of the times that the middle class and the poor people, I don't know how they're going to go forward. They're just financially devastated. On a good day, the poor are struggling. All the disposable income for the middle class is pretty much evaporated, and they're even reporting that people who are affluent are pulling back on spending, which is just a logical reaction. So, we have a lot of things going on here, folks. I tell you, please keep your eye on the border. In major cities, until the people in those cities have had enough of the status quo in the political environment, they're never going to change. We went through a period in New York, for example, in the 70s and 80s where it was bang, bang, shoot 'em up. Difference then was the police were out engaging the criminal element. In the early 90s, January of 93, police commissioner came into being in New York City, William Bratton. In 2 years, he brought the homicide rate from approximately 2,500 to under 500. He used policies like quality of life, zero tolerance, stop and frisk, which was judiciously employed at the time to get the guns off the street. What you're going to find interesting, and this isn't a show about New York, I just make a reference to New York so as few of us in the rest of the country could possibly do, not make the same mistake. But, just turn the clock back. City was the safest, largest city. It was just incredible to live there for 25 years based on the policies that this one man implemented. He was, I would say, brilliant, to put it to you politely. I do want to mention something else about the borders because, if you listen to some of the media outlets and others seem to be reluctant, fentanyl and other controlled substances are flooding into this country, period. We're also having a sex trafficking issue there. And I always refer to this Phantom Rescue, which is headed up by Frank Smith and Tony Sparks, as one of these mechanisms to go in and address that problem. So before we get rolling today, I do want to thank our sponsors, Buzzsprout and Instacart. And I'm going to tell you a little bit more about them later, and that we have taken some special offers and set them aside for you. Buzzsprout is the platform for the show, what the show is built off of. And Instacart is something that many people, my family included, utilize. Very effective. Today we're going to have a caller and an email, at least one. I understand we'll have a couple of callers and at least one email. And we're going to be right back. Instacart, another interesting concept. You can go to your favorite grocery stores, sign on to their application without leaving your home, the comfort of your home. Just pick out the items you'd like. They'll assign a personal shopper for you and deliver them to the point that you would like them delivered to. Another great concept, very user-friendly, and I'll be honest, we use it also. It's very effective, and they're very, very good. They're very on point. Hello?
Hi, it's Andrew Feldman.
Andrew.
Oh, is this Ryan?
Andrew, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. It's Lou.
Oh, hey, how are you? I never know who's answering the phone first, or if it goes right through, I apologize.
No, not necessary, Andrew. I gather you're following what's going on in the country today.
I'm sick to my stomach, man.
Yeah. Where are you right now? I know we went over this once before, but where are you?
I'm outside of Las Vegas.
Oh, you are? Okay. You're in Nevada. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
There's a lot of nice communities around Vegas. Yeah.
Yes. I love it.
Did you have a question, comment, observation, any of the above?
Yeah, I just, I'm really interested. I almost didn't even want to bring it up, but all these shootings that are going on and this bizarre timing, which could be me being paranoid or there could be something to it. I don't want to sound like a kook that wears a tinfoil hat or anything, but, I just find it interesting that whenever, and it's not just these kind of subject matters, whenever a big issue comes up, then events surrounding it seem to occur. And it doesn't seem organic to me.
What events are you referring to specifically, Andrew?
So the Olveda school shooting, and then the guy that just shot up the Hyde Park parade.
Yeah. The issue, Andrew, is, and they're finally, and it's almost reluctantly speaking to this whole issue we have in the country about mental health. Mm-hmm. the common denominator to every mass shooting, or let me even broaden that statement, assault, is mental health. Whether you're being slashed on a subway or you're being run down on the West Side Highway or any number of cities throughout the world, it's actually one of the more common means of assault, which is subscribed to by Al-Qaeda, to use these big trucks because, what you're able to accomplish.
Right.
We have a mental health problem in the country, Andrew. I mean, I think you might agree with that. May I ask you a question? Yeah, Andrew, I want to ask you a question just for frame of reference. How old are you?
55.
Okay, so you were around in more peaceful times.
Yes.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying.
Yes. I remember those days. And I even remember, everybody older than me talked about all these wars, Vietnam, Korea, World War II. Yeah. I mean, growing up, it was peacetime, and it seemed like something that used to happen. And we had this long period of peace. And I even remember writing a paper in college about Clinton called Is History Over? Because history is like all these events that happen. And it seemed like now the world's in kind of this cool equilibrium. And now it's just turned on its head. It's very upsetting.
Yeah. I don't like to make it too simple, although I love the anachronism KISS. But if I can just, in a very simplified manner, speak to it, I think there's just a lack of leadership in the country. I think there's a lack of leadership in our White House, not just this administration, but prior. There seems to be an inability to galvanize the country. We're so busy reminding each other of how different we are and how much we can't get along because of these differences that we've caused this instability. And I would say,
Andrew, it's interesting that you say that, because one thing that I've noticed is that when you watch the news and it's reflected in all of that, everything you just said, and then I find the opposite when I just go about my daily life. I meet people of all different backgrounds. Hey, how you doing? We sit, normal life. And it doesn't seem like there's this conflict on a daily basis the way they're trying to make it seem like it is. Like people get along.
Very, very good insight. Andrew, thing I've said recently, actually not that recent, I've been saying it for quite a while now, is that the media is intentionally misrepresenting the state of the country. And by that I mean, and I'll break this into an analogy for you in 1 second, they are misrepresenting the number of volume of people that are in dissent the way we see presented on TV. Listen to this for 1 second, Andrew, and then you can comment on this. We have 335 million people, right? If 5% of those were in the streets carrying on, that would be roughly 16 million people. Tell me what you think would happen to this country if on a daily basis we had 16 million people, 5% of the populace, engaging in civil disobedience, committing crimes, arson, looting, robberies, assault. What do you think this country would be?
I think they would react in totally the opposite direction that they are now with the defund the police and all that kind of stuff.
That's one thing for certain. But,
maybe a civil war.
Well, look, I say this, and I don't mean to say it tongue-in-cheek. I'm saying it literally. I think the country is going to experience states seceding from the Union again, not in the same manner or capacity that they did during the Civil War years, but countries like, states like Florida, Texas, Nevada that have a certain amount of financial autonomy, they're going to look to the federal government and go, why are we doing this with you guys? You guys are, it's like the institution run by the inmates. Why are we? Yeah, exactly. Why are we going to? Well, listen, I learned that in the police department, to be candid with you.
No, I used to be a correctional officer. So
you know what I'm talking about. We have our own culture, you know that, and it's a bit incestuous, but we have our share of characters and just everything that goes along with it. But there's a lack of leadership in the country for sure, and the media that you just touched upon are really the most destabilizing force in the country. They're causing the most division and polarization among the citizens. I just want to say one thing, and I'm sure you feel the same way. I don't really care who anybody sleeps with. I don't care if you sit or you stand when you go to the bathroom. I don't care if you like dressing up like a woman, you like dressing up like a man. Be very candid with you. I think that's the way 99% of America feels. We have better things to do, and correct me if I'm wrong, Andrew, but we're all just trying to get through the day here and survive.
That's right. That's the bottom line. We're all just trying to make it through this crazy world we live in, and whatever gets you through it. If you're not hurting other people,
absolutely,
good for you.
Absolutely,
good for you.
You hit the nail right on the head. So, what is this optic and narrative that they're creating, making it seem like the country's on fire? We have a minuscule percentage of the population that is altering the trajectory of this country and the history and the future of this country, and primarily our children. Why? You know what it is? Most of us are just sitting around there not wanting to get involved, logically speaking. If it doesn't impact you, people don't normally get involved. And we're letting this minuscule percentage of the country steer the conversation. And it's quite disturbing. I can tell you, Andrew, real quick, and I want you to comment further, but I was in the summer of 2020 in New York City working. I was in the streets. There were groups of like 10, 15 kids engaged in breaking windows and things of this nature and looting stores. It wasn't hundreds and hundreds of thousands. I don't know where we ever got this impression that this is what's going on. Oh, yeah, you had to see it. I watched it.
Crazy.
You would think, based on the media, that we have thousands of people or tens of thousands of people marching in cities and destroying cities. That's not what it is.
Right.
So the question that now comes to oversight of the media, and I'm sure you have a feeling.
So briefly, I just want to say that, in my opinion, what it is it's a psychological operation, because especially when you watch, I mean, I would say all the mainstream, even Fox, I watch that more than anything, but I'm getting tired of them too. But it's a psychological operation, especially when you think back to how the news used to be, when it was who, what, when, where, what. And now it's these talking heads that are spewing opinion in this very vitriolic, emotional, intense way. They're appealing to people's emotions. They're using psychological methods to alter people's perceptions. And so there's a bigger thing behind that. It's a war against us. I mean, even the president went out of the country on July 4th and bashed America. Who does that?
I was going to get to that at some point today. But you have to go back, if I could turn the clock back for you. You were born in around 1966, 67.
Got it.
We didn't have 24-hour news cycle.
Right.
You turned the news on at 5 and you got Walter Cronkite or any number of credible journalists that were more factually driven. This has become part of the entertainment. And you touched upon Fox, for example. Fox has now become part of the problem because they have journalists that are just incredibly irresponsible, I guess, in telling stories. I don't even call them journalists. I hate to pick on Sean Hannity, but, to defile or demean or degrade the president serves no purpose. If the president does something that is not in the best interest of the country, you should point it out in a constructive manner. I think you would agree with that, right? Am I correct?
Sir. Yes, sir. Even though I don't like Biden, he's our president, and you have to show him respect.
Absolutely. There's got to be lines in the sand, and we have a mechanism to address this. It's called voting.
Exactly.
That's how we fix this problem. So, you're plugged into things much the same. I'm 15 years older than you are, Andrew, and I grew up in an even more gentle and calm environment. I remember being a kid in New York, just being able to ride subways or walk places or go to Central Park or any number of things. And I don't know what happened. I mean, we're afraid to let our children walk out the front door today because the country has changed so drastically. Yeah. But it's an indictment of the country. And, the other problem that's being fed, you'll find this interesting. You were born in about 67. Population of the country in 1970 was about 200 million. It's up 135 million. I was born in 51. The population was 150 million. It's more than doubled in my lifetime.
Wow.
Why are we growing the country like this so we can't manage it? Is that the exercise?
Yes.
Andrew, stick with me 1 second. I'm going to come back to you and give you the floor again. Guys, we're going to take a quick break. This is Between the Lines. I encourage you to call in, betweenthelines.tv. Email me also. So let me tell you a little bit about Buzzsprout. Very interesting concept. Basically, it allows you to set up your own podcast. One of the most advantageous things about using Buzzsprout is it's user-friendly. So I encourage you highly, if your inclination is to create your own podcast, please look into Buzzsprout. And by the way, we use it. We're back. I have a gentleman on the phone. Andrew has some rather interesting insight as to the country today. I think that perhaps what drives him, which drives many of us, is his love of the country and his understanding of the environment in which he lives in. He's mentioned some issues involving our elected officials and our media, and he's spot on. They're misrepresenting a lot of facts. So, Andrew, what do you think about the borders?
Well, a country, right? I mean, without even getting philosophical, it's a tragedy. The United Nations just said it's the most dangerous border crossing in the world. Thousands of people are dying. Children are being trafficked. Women are being trafficked. Fentanyl is coming over the country from China, because China has always fought wars with drugs first. And so they're selling the fentanyl to the cartels, and the cartels are smuggling it to the United States. And now all of our best and brightest people are dropping dead like flies all over the United States. And that's because we have an open border.
You know what I say, Andrew, is that the greatest threat to national security is that southern border. And the interesting thing, I will tell you, I had a home and an office in L.A. for a very, very long time. And I ran into a lot of people from Mexico, working in restaurants or, in the entertainment industry. Or you cannot like the people. They're just very warm and there's
100%.
They're very, very different. But that's not who's coming into the country today. You do know that, right?
That's right. That's right.
We're having an element, and I don't say this in a condescending manner. I say it in a truthful manner. They're from the third world, and it's a whole different mindset, mentality.
Yeah.
And I'm not negating the fact that they're running from tyranny in those countries. I wonder if it would be smarter and cheaper for us to go to the leaders of each of these countries and say, listen, tighten up your act here, or there's going to be some serious ramifications, maybe military in nature, because we don't seem to hesitate invading countries that we certainly don't need to belong in. I said that we shouldn't have invaded Iraq. We should have invaded Mexico, to be candid with you, Andrew. What do you think of that?
No, I agree with you, but it goes back to a lot of what I've been trying to say is, unfortunately, I think that there is a plan in place right now to destroy the America that we know. And it's through a combination of open borders, socialist policies, these pseudo environmental policies. I love nature. I'm a conservationist big time, but like they're putting in like the alternative power. They're doing solar right down the road from us. And this is the most unenvironmentally sound thing I've ever seen. They took pristine BLM land, brought in hundreds of trucks, porta potties, generators, cut roads, and that's supposed to be alternative energy.
That's what they call progress, huh?
Right. And so now, who was it? It was one of the oil company execs that said gas might go up. I can't remember the number, but it would equate to about $15 a gallon in gasoline. And these are all ways in the inflation where they're just really, I've never trusted my government, and I think that's a good thing. But this is the first time in my life where I feel like the government is actively working against my best interests on purpose.
You know what's interesting, Andrew, is that if you really understood the founding fathers, they alluded to not over-trusting the government. It's really very interesting, the whole conversation with the founding fathers and this whole very sensitive Second Amendment, which I tell people isn't about guns, it's about your freedom.
That's right.
They were distrustful of the future. They were distrustful of the leaders of the future, which is why they told our citizens to embrace firearms. The same way we're allowing the Ukrainian citizenry to embrace firearms to repel foreign invader and tyranny. Same things our founding fathers alluded to. The unfortunate part is that we do have a mental health problem here.
Yes, sir.
And instead of us intelligently and truthfully addressing it, we just keep the old smoke and mirror routine going on, and we get nowhere. And I don't know what to say to everyone. One of the things I try to remind people of, Andrew, is that we are overtaxing the law enforcement community. I don't know how many individuals, groups, borders, missions that are domestically driven 800,000 law enforcement agents can undertake with a population of 335 million, which I mentioned earlier. Yeah. Listen to the numbers, and you can Google this. Fact check me. I remind people, don't be spoon-fed by me. Go out and do your own legwork. And by the way, stop being spoon-fed by the media outlets like MSNBC, Fox, CNN, NBC, ABC, CBS, The View, all of them. They're irresponsible. Yes. They don't think about what they're saying or what it's going to translate to, Andrew. I know you're living in the same world I am. Do you have children, by the way?
Of course.
You have skin in the game, as I put it. You imagine that your children likely have another 50 years of this stupidity? And this is avoidable, by the way, and it's fixable.
It is. I believe it will be.
I hope you're right, buddy, because I'm wondering if we hit a point, we hit the point of no return. That's what I'm concerned about here, because we have so many things tugging at us. I don't know how we get this back on track.
Think about our history. Think about every unbelievable event that could have shifted the course of America, but didn't. Everything from the world wars to, a lot of people don't know this, but there was a huge push in America in the 30s for communism and Nazism. That was defeated. We got through all the social revolutions of the 50s and the 60s and the 70s. And I have faith in this country, and I believe in America, and I believe that we're blessed by God. And I believe we're going to get through this, and we're going to get back to being the best country in the history of the world.
I want to say this in response to your comment there. I agree with you on many levels. I think this is the most resilient nation in the history of mankind. And I do think we have the ability to pull this out of the fire. But the one thing people must do, Andrew, in November, and then in November of 2024, they've got to go to the polls. I want to say something to you which might shock you, but I'm not anti-Democrat. I think we need a healthy Democratic Party, which I've stated before, so we have some balance in representation of people with different views, just to kind of simplify this.
Of course. Well,
we lost the Democratic Party.
Oh, I'm sorry, sir. But I do think that that's an interesting point, because up until very recently, my take on Democrat versus Republican was that they both had the same end game, which was what's in the best interest of America. But they had philosophical differences on what's the best way to get there.
Good observation. Good assessment.
Now it's become America versus anti-America.
Well, you're spot on, Andrew. I can't argue with one thing that you just said. I think the agenda has shifted. I want to just digress, if I may, to prior conversation with you that I believe we had. You deal with a food issue. Am I correct with children?
No.
You don't?
That would be somebody else.
Oh, okay. I thought you and I had spoken about that at one other time about the insecurity issue with food.
Oh, food insecurity. Yes, we did talk about that.
Yeah, that's what I'm referring to. I'm sorry, I misstated or misrepresented. What's going on with that?
So that's why I have chickens and rabbits in a garden.
That's funny. Do you have any programs or suggestions or recommendations to the public?
For food insecurity?
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Grow a garden. I know a lot of people can't keep chickens, but you keep rabbits in your house or in your basement or in your garage or something like that.
So they're pets, then you eat them? Come on.
They're not pets.
True.
They're not pets. They're food.
I got you. I'm with you. I'm with you. I'm with you, buddy. That's interesting.
As are the chickens.
Where'd you go to school, Andrew?
You're going to die laughing when I tell you this. Oh my God, I'm embarrassed. I graduated from Portland State University.
Good school. Well, but you graduated, you know what it is? But you graduated in a different time.
I did. They were getting woke though back there. It was a little rough navigating that. But it worked out good in the end. I got a phenomenal education. I did. I can't deny that.
What'd you major in?
U.S. history.
Oh, no kidding. Great topic. Yeah. Boy, is that something everybody should learn about. Am I right?
Yeah.
I'll bet you could teach some good lessons today, I suspect.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I just think if people want to understand one thing about America is it's the rule of law versus the rule of man.
I want to ask you something else that I know you're observing. I mean, we're watching in an unprecedented manner individuals converge on the residences of our Supreme Court justices. You mentioned earlier about him being critical of our judicial system and citing the Supreme Court justices, which is un-American as you can get when you do this on foreign soil. What's going on with the Attorney General in Mallorca, Homeland Security, and not enforcing federal law, preventing them from intimidating or making them feel insecure? What's going on with them? I mean, is there going to be?
They want to rock the boat big time. Those justices deserve 24/7 Secret Service.
You know, that's interesting you brought that up, because now the conversation's being had as to how they're going to move forward to protect the justices. And what they're going to have to do is basically provide each of them a form of the president's security, which involves advances, taking control of hotels and environments, putting up high point men and observers, drones, heavily facilitated security details. This is quite an interesting twist or turn of events. And what is so interesting also is that we've never had to do this prior to a conservative element making a judgment or a ruling. We didn't have to do this anytime that the Democrats, were able to push forward their agenda through the Supreme Court. It's another critique of the country. But once again, just for optics' sake, and we're going to go to a quick break, if you look at the number of people outside their homes, we're not talking about thousands of people. We're talking about 10, 20, 30 people, and they're steering this whole thing. Guys, we're going to be right back. My name is Lou. This is Between the Lines, and I have a gentleman with me who has a lot of good insight into this country. Andrew, we'll be right back. Okay, we're back, ladies and gentlemen. I have a gentleman calling in, Andrew, and he has a lot of good instincts and intuitions as far as what's going on in the country. And that's not because it's politically attached, just factually, truthfully attached. Excuse me. You just have to look at what's going on in the country today. I want to give you one final opportunity to speak, to observation, critique, whatever is perhaps on your mind.
Well, I would like to say that, Lou, I really appreciate what you're doing. I think you're doing a service. I really mean that. And I encourage you to continue. And I thank you very much for having me on your show so many times. It's always a pleasure. Yeah,
please know you're welcome to arrange, call in anytime you like, because we need more voices like yours, Andrew, to be very candid with you. You have a very simple, commonsensical, logical approach in building your observations. And sadly, we've stepped away from the truth. And what I speak to is the truth. And I think what you brought up today was quite truthful itself. I want to thank you. And please make sure you call back in, buddy.
Yes, sir. Thanks again, Lou.
My pleasure. Thank you. We'll be right back, guys. Hello?
Hi, is this Lou?
It is.
Hey, Lou, it's David from Charlotte, North Carolina.
David, how are you? I have a history in Charlotte, North Carolina.
You told me a little bit about it, but could you remind me?
Yeah, my mom and dad moved from New York in 1977. My sister moved down there with her current husband, and my parents kind of followed, and they bumped into that wonderful city at the time. Charlotte was not developed the way it is today, but it turned out to be a very nice city. And I'm sure, like every major city, they're having their problems, but it's a nice place to be. North Carolina is a nice state, David. Nice state.
It sure is, and thank you for that. Funnily enough, I got some stuff to my house. Was an ex-New York City sanitation worker, so we had a nice long conversation about public utilities, which is what we're going to be talking about today.
Aha, so go.
Yeah. So, Lou, I seem to call in every 7 months, and we seem to talk about around this issue of hunger and food. And the very first time we talked, you did mention on something that I want to delve into a little bit deeper this time, which was you said that to help alleviate these social and material problems of hunger and food scarcity, that corporations, you didn't feel like they had to be compelled to do so, that it should be voluntary. And I'm wondering if you can maybe detail what your thoughts were about that, about how they could voluntarily address these issues.
Well, I think, corporate America is in a position, and let's just start with our children, just to begin with, because that's my Achilles heel with this culture.
Yeah, that's what it's all about.
Oh, hell
that's
yeah.
What it's all about. Yeah,
look,
absolutely.
David, that's it. It's about them and their future. For everyone that hasn't figured it out, I'm 70 years old, and I'm going to hop, skip, and jump through the rest of this. It's not that I'll be untouched, but pretty damn close to it. This is about our children and the young people in this country, young people in their 20s and 30s that need to have some sense of this made. My feeling as far as corporate America goes is that, they have an obligation, in my opinion, not by mandate, but by morality, to start to contribute to issues that lend itself to the welfare of our children to start with. their education, their diet, their medicine, the safety of their neighborhoods. I've spoken numerous times, David, as to the disparity in which minorities live in this country. How I know so much about it as I was born into it. My mother and father didn't have 2 nickels to rub together. My dad was around during the Depression, was riding boxcars. My mother was from Arkansas, Scotch-Irish and Cherokee Indian. They met in St. Louis, Missouri, and years later they got married there. Ended up in New York, and we lived in an entirely black neighborhood. I was the only white kid on the block, and I benefited from it. What it did was it taught me about people that were different in theory than I am, although we're really all the same. What it did teach me is the disparity in which they live. And I always say the following: the government, along with corporate America, should start to fund addressing this disparity, which means you're going to have to put more uniform policing to deter and prevent crime, right? Maybe you need to commingle it, for example, with the National Guard for a short window of time with a curfew. Make sure these children get into classrooms where they learn, not where they maintain order. Make their streets safe so they can play in them without worrying about being collateral damage. Upgrade their diet and upgrade their medicine, because their medicine stinks, in comparatively speaking, to kids that live, say, on Park Avenue and 72nd Street. That's just the truth. And I could tell you the hospitals they go to. So as I was saying, David, and I'm going to let you jump right in 1 second, corporate America should voluntarily start to address some of these issues. And Lord knows we've got people that are building, individuals, companies building spaceships, to go play in space. Or a country like we have that are putting $53 billion into the Ukraine, and the Ukraine is important. And I'm not saying abandon them, but you know what $53 billion could do for us here, David?
Oh, yeah. Trust me. I have conversations with my wife every day about that. So
do you win?
Absolutely.
Do you win?
Yeah. Do we win?
No. Do you win?
Oh, no. For the sake of peace, I say yes, dear, a lot. But but we actually agree. We agree on a lot of things. You pick and choose your
battles like I do.
Yeah, but we agree on a lot. So that's not hard. So I guess you say they should be voluntary. So why haven't they done this? I mean, you can look at outcomes in America since the 1950s with like African Americans, and we've had some state intervention and some mixed intervention, and then a whole series of time where there's no interventions, and corporate America has been left to its own doing. Or you can even look at the entire history of capitalism that goes back to the founding of the English East India Company. Why haven't they? So why haven't they gotten involved with this yet? Or do they lack the moral impetus to do it?
I think what they need is the prompting. I think what we need to do is to start to have a conversation that lends itself to what you and I are talking about. No such conversation is taking place, David. Would you agree? In other words, we listen. No, hear me out. We listen to all of these socialist ideas of overtaxing the people that make money, like you want to punish them, which, by the way, translates to reducing their disposable income, which translates to our economy. But maybe what we need to do is to start to have a conversation and ask them to willingly become part of a solution. Let's just start with a very basic, fundamental conversation. And from there, like investigations, the conversation will take legs. Does that sound feasible?
Well, it sounds reasonable, but I wonder if I'm dealing with, or we would be dealing with, always good actors on that sense. Look at the airline industry and, the bailout that they got, because we need to have transportation. We need to have the airlines function. And we gave them all this money during COVID so that you would be able to have a functioning airline system. And it's not working.
Yeah, but
right?
see, David, let me stop for 1 second. Please, I apologize.
Sure. No, go ahead.
That's up to the government to stipulate when we bail them out and have oversight. You see, I hear what you're saying. You're 100% correct. But that's the same thing that would happen with corporations in a general sense. We need to at least start to have the conversation, is what I'm saying to you. And what you're saying about the airline industry is spot on. But the government should have said, hey, and don't get cute. Don't get creative. Don't start adding on charges. We're trying to help you. Try to help your passengers. Go ahead, David.
Well, I was going to say about you, this is a theme that you bring up a lot, which I agree with you on. This systemic failure of leadership, right? And so we should have the government step in and say, you were getting cute with this money, and I need to see your books. I need to order these things. We need maybe, come up with a framework so that you can actually function like a public service like you're supposed to, right? So what I'm saying, though, it's not just in the corporations that I wonder if we're having, the good good faith actors, but also in let's say the federal level, because I still have a lot of faith in our local leaders, no matter their party, and I also have no faith in the federal government no matter the party.
One of the problems, David, and you're starting to brush up against it, and I'm going to address it. Mm-hmm. Too much special interest money, lobbyists, right? So if you want to know why they indiscriminately distribute money to an airline industry without any form of oversight or stipulation, it's because of the impetus to doing it. You follow me? In other words, we've got special interest groups and lobbyists in there, and they get what they want, and the government just kind of turns a blind eye. Look, we need to revamp the government. I don't know what to say about this, but the thing that the American public has to do at some point in time is shut down. I hate to subscribe to not paying taxes because that would hurt our children, hurt our elderly, hurt our veterans. So that's not really feasible. But they've got to do something at some point to express their disdain and their need for something different. Maybe a third party, David.
Oh my, Lou, you're singing. Listen, Lou, that part of the reason I moved to North Carolina, it wasn't a reason, but it was a benefit, was that I thought I'd be able to vote for the parties that I'd actually had been registering for, just to find out last week that one of the candidates got denied ballot access. They had enough signatures. The two-party system is so prevalent. They get to choose who gets to run.
We've outgrown it, David.
Office.
We've outgrown it, buddy.
And it's not even in the Constitution that they should have those powers. So it's absolutely insane.
Let me tell you something that's interesting in the last Democratic primaries, which I watched all of them. Mm-hmm. At one point, Mr. Bloomberg, who I've met, he's a nice man, he's a gentleman. I have to be honest. I met him in the early or mid-'90s with Sarah Ferguson, the Duchess of York. I was handling her security. He's a nice man. He spent $500 million making a run at the presidency under the guise he was going to rescue the Democratic Party and rescue the country. Yeah. If you watched the primaries, he got slapped from one end of the stage to the other. He wasn't ready for prime time. But the thing I mentioned is he could have funded a third party. See my point? You with me?
Yeah.
He had enough money. This man has enough money to fund a third party. We had a run at it before with another Perot. Ross, thank you, buddy. Yeah. And of course, he was in again, out again, Finnegan. But then we also had an issue with who he chose as a vice president, as a running mate, the admiral, who was just, I hate to say it too, he was cognitively gone. And I don't say that in any way other than
I remember
with regret. Yeah, he was just in a bed. Look, Father Time catches us all. We're talking about it with this current president, and I'm not clinically backgrounded to really speak to it much beyond that. But we need to revamp the government. I don't know how many ways to say it. Part of the problem, David, is that if you run for office and you align with the Democrats or the Republicans to get their money, you have to espouse their platforms, which you cannot do. They're both wrong in many, many areas. The Democrats would like to leave the minorities with the feeling that they care about them, and they don't. They do nothing to help them. The Republicans flat out tell you, we're not going to help you. So either way, they're not getting helped. But you need someone that can come to the middle on these discussions and start to understand how to fix and heal this country, and they seem to lack the voice or the ability or the understanding. They're tied to their politics. I'm oftentimes saying, David, I wish you loved your children as much as you love your politics and your agenda, because you're destroying the future of my children and all young people here, period. Yeah. We're going to go to a quick break, David, and I'm going to bring you right back, sir, if you'll just stick with me. Guys, Absolutely. This is Between the Lines. I encourage you to please call in or send us an email. It's betweenthelines.tv. We're going to be right back. We're back, ladies and gentlemen, and I have a really unique caller, David, currently in North Carolina, has a lot of good political insight and senses like many people who speak to me. People calling into my show. I have a show in Jacksonville between 5 and 6, Monday and Tuesday live. I'm getting a lot of the same observations and feelings from people. They're starting to realize something's gone terribly wrong here. One thing I think America feels is helpless and hopeless. And with that being said, I want to, David, give you a final opportunity to speak, an observation, critique, comment, whatever floats your boat.
Listen, one of my favorite songs from Bob Dylan is "You Got to Serve Somebody." And I think a lot of Americans need to wake up to the fact that everyone around you is serving somebody, but most of the people that are telling you that they're there to help serve you, they're serving profit, whether it's their own profit or the profit of their own donors.
That's
And
very true.
we need to find ways, even if we have a third party, we need to find ways to curb the influence or eliminate the influence of profit so that we can actually serve people and grow our communities, because that's really what it's all about. It's a different type of profit. It's not financial, it's communal profit.
I tell you this, David, I serve my children and I serve the young people in this country who are entitled to something different. And I say to begin the purification component of this system is we need to just start to address the legislation that focuses on our children to begin with, our elderly, our veterans, our mentally ill, our homeless, right? All of them. And then just as I always say, keep it simple, stupid. It'll simplify the agenda, which will bring us back into some form of alignment. Because what happens, David, is every time we go near a topic, we get creative. Some people refer to it as pork belly spending. We're in the middle of a COVID crisis, and we're worried about a paint job in the Kennedy Center.
Yeah.
You hear me, right? And
Yeah.
The last interviewer, the gentleman called in, Andrew, I said, or I may not have said it to Andrew, but we have the Build Back Better bill, which addresses the needs of the farmers commingled with legislation that helps our children. Why isn't that legislation separated out and expedited through? Period. I mean, what the problem is here, the cuckoo left the clock. So, David, I have to let you go. I appreciate you calling in more than I could tell you in words, and I encourage you to continue to call in, and I hope you have a great existence in North Carolina. You're in a good place, buddy.
Thank you so much. Always a pleasure to call in. Hey, I'm hoping that in about 2 years' time, we can talk about a book that I'm working on.
Sounds good to me.
Hope you're well, and take care of everyone you love. And
you too, buddy. America. Thank you so much for calling, David.
Okay, bye-bye.
We'll be right back, guys. We're back, ladies and gentlemen. We are going to go to an email from Mike from Nashville, Tennessee. I gather that's where that Nashville is. It says, Lou, another week and more shootings. The big one was in Chicago with, you guessed it, a high-powered rifle that people thought were fireworks. I'm a father in 3, and I'm getting to the point where I feel it's unsafe to go almost anywhere these days because you never know. How do you, as a father, explain this mess? How do you explain these mass shootings to your children? I just tell my children, to be honest with you, sometimes things just don't make sense. I do tell them truthfully that the world and the country is a little out of tilt, and that we need to get it back on the right course and of path. Interestingly enough, this shooting in Highland Park, another deeply disturbed individual who had all the telltale signs. What I said earlier in addressing these topics is that even if this person had been institutionalized and then released because he was on medication, because of HIPAA, there's no way anybody would know not to sell him a gun. Defect in the system. If he were adjudicated mentally ill, right, in a court of law, and he filled out a 4473, the federal firearms form that allows you to request a NICS check to buy a gun, he checked it off, never been adjudicated. There's no way to know. There's no database to feed it into. I just don't know what to say, but I do want to say this. I firmly believe the number one leading cause to many of these actions of these young Americans, these boys, is family. We're having, just parental issues here, folks. I tell people it's harder to parent than not parent. By the way, that's what I tell my children. I lay out clearly that there are going to be consequences and boundaries. And I want to tell you something interesting, and I'm not ashamed to say it. My kids tap dance all over me. Thank God I have my wife, because she's got the cojones in the family with my children. I have no power with these kids. I don't know how to say no. Where the line in the sand for me, though, is when they get a little too animated towards each other, or they start to go down these roads with discussions about what's going on in high schools, drugs and alcohol, and what kids come in. I go to the school. I take them to school and pick them up every day as often as I can. And I observe who's there. I see all these kids that are unmade beds. It's not them. It's their parents. The parental exercise is failing. Compounded. Video games, teaching these kids weapon systems and how to implement tactics. The entertainment industry, social media, bullying in schools. I mean, the list goes on and on. There's no such thing as single causality in this discussion. But we've also grown the population to a point that it's becoming exponentially more difficult to manage the population. And we have a mental health crisis here. And only after the most recent shooting incident in Uvalde are they starting to mention mental health, because they want to mislead you into thinking it's a gun issue. It's not a gun issue, but it's incumbent upon people who embrace the Second Amendment, like myself, to become part of a discussion that lends itself to helping to fix this problem. The first element of it is preventing the mentally ill and the emotionally disturbed people from getting their hands on firearms. They could talk about red flag laws and enhanced background checks. That's just all rhetoric. Listen, this is my world. They can throw baloney at somebody else. I'd like to say a bad word, but I'm not allowed. They can throw the baloney to somebody else. I know how to fix this problem, but it's going to take people sitting down, okay, involvement of community leaders. I don't know what to say about, you mentioned this incident with this young man shooting up a parade. There had 57 shootings in Chicago, folks. You think that's because we have a gun control problem? We have an enforcement problem. We have a drug problem. Pull your heads out of your heinies here and look at the truth of this. I don't know how people are getting elected in these major cities, but they are, and they're running these cities into the ground. They couldn't find their backsides with both hands, no less lead a city like Chicago. It's just despicable. You know, I got to tell you, these kids are out there all over the country, and I hate to say it, but we need to watch out for them. And the thing is that they become disenfranchised from their families and from the rest of society because they're too much to deal with. That's part of the problem. There's a lot of things feeding or fueling this thing. But as far as my children go, I give them the benefit of my travels. I tell them, relax, enjoy your life. Your dad will be there to protect you, and I will be as much as I can. I suggest other parents take up that gauntlet as well, that mantle, because that's the solution to this thing. Start to parent, folks. Guys, I got to let you go this week. I appreciate everybody who called in that email, and I hope to hear from you guys next week. This is Between the Lines. My name is Lou Palumbo, and I thank you for listening.